Johnson.
So the report released from this committee proved what we all have known to be true, which is the Chinese Communist Party has been engaging in textbook anti-competitive behavior, overproduction, dumping, government subsidy of those arenas, those industries. And of course, we've seen it very acutely in this critical minerals space. And as a free market Republican, I think about, well, okay, what can we do to try to push back on China's attempts to gain a near monopoly in the critical minerals arena? The U.S. government has taken an equity stake, Mr. Slouster, Mr. Evans, in your companies. That's not normally the first place my mind goes to what our government should do. I'm open to the idea that, as the ranking member said, we need a Manhattan Project approach, and maybe unusual times call for unusual tactics. But what can you say that would make me feel a little better about the government owning a piece of your companies?
Well, thank you, sir. This is a very important discussion to have. Free market capitalism is the engine of our economy, no doubt about it. But I think the reality is today we are not operating in a free market. China is both a monopoly and a non-market economy. The most important features of our agreement, and I do think, with respect to some of the other agreements that have been discussed, ours is very, very unique. The actual most transformative feature of that agreement is the price floor, which corrects this distortive non-market behavior that this investigation found. And what the equity piece of the agreement allows U.S. taxpayers to do is to benefit from the upside gain that comes along with correcting for that issue. And as I said in my prepared testimony, it's already manifested in significant unrealized gains for taxpayers. So I think it's important when we think about this, where there is market intervention, it should not just be to absorb risk or take losses, but to enable the U.S. government and the taxpayer to participate in some of the upside. And I think that's what our agreement allows for.
In our case, in return for the government's equity stake, we're being offered some of the lowest cost of capital in the world. As I mentioned here, one of the difficult parts for industries like ours is actually the upfront capital cost, because again, we're not on a level playing field. I have to follow laws here, and there's things that we need to do. So the $2 billion of low-cost capital is actually a huge advantage, but it's also a signal to the industry that this is important, and to also the private sector. That loan, which was under process, which took about 2.5 years to go through the whole process, attracted General Motors, which put in a base investment and actually became a joint venture partner, and also attracted Orion, which, again, the U.S. government's working with offshore to develop mining projects with the Department of War. Those two partners likely would not have come if it wasn't a public-private partnership. And as I echo Matt's comments as well, if we do well, the taxpayers should do well. So this really enabled our project to be successful, but has also sent a signal to the industry this stuff is important, and now more private capital has actually been involved. So we're happy to be a good example for the rest of the industry, but also...
Well, and gentlemen, listen, I get it. I mean, you're arguing in essence that this is a super special circumstance, and that, because hearing phrases like, oh, if our company does well, then the American taxpayer does well. I mean, that's just not how we view the private sector, right? That if that store owner or that dentist or that architect does well, that there's an equity stake for government. I mean, generally, if they do well, they pay more taxes, right? So, but that's the more traditional system. I'm open to the idea that this is a bold approach that is unique to your industry. Mr. Evans, you said you hope that this can be an example for within your industry. I just hope it's not an example across other industries, because it does seem that if we start to do this in other industries, we're going to go to a place that doesn't feel like free market capitalism. But with the limited time I've got left, Mr. Evans, help me. You mentioned permitting reform briefly. It seems like a hugely important part of where we need to go if we're actually going to become a global leader in critical minerals. Share some additional thoughts.
It's really for anything, sir. Any type of infrastructure we want to build in this country. I don't care if it's a cell phone tower, it's high-tension lines. We're under the same laws, NEPA laws and so forth. And look, we need to have very strong regulations in this country, but a lot of the regulations were actually struck and cast when we were in a time where we were dealing with an opposite problem, which it was overgrowth in housing, overgrowth in industry, and so forth. It's a real barrier. The goal of all of this is to have private sector come forward, but they need certainty around things. Our process was 5 years. Look, and I was sued. I was permitted by the Trump administration, and 1 week later I was sued. And I was stuck in court for 4.5 years. I went through a formal appeals process. I went through an appeal process on top of that in California and the circuit court. And part of the issue behind that is the groups that actually do that, they know they're not going to win. They just want to slow you down and hopefully bankrupt you because you're not going to get any financing. And this faces our whole country. And we're at a point now where we have to grow. We have to put important infrastructure in place. Can you imagine building the interstate highway system today in this country? You would never get done. So we have to fix this where there are limits around appeals and not depend on whatever judge that you get or somebody listening to 2 people out of 100 that are claiming the same thing over and over again. The certainty, if it's not there, look, I've talked to the Koreans and the Japanese and so forth. They would rather invest here than anywhere else in the world. Once you have an asset and the government's not going to take it away, we're the strongest economy in the world. You'll attract actually even more overseas investment here if there's certainty around the legal process. It's much too litigious and much too long.
Thank you.